You already know more about people than you think. You notice the way someone's smile doesn't quite match their eyes. You feel the tension in a voice that says, "I'm fine," but doesn't sound fine at all. Deep down, you've always sensed these cracks in the surface. You just haven't had the words to explain them. That's where Nietzsche comes in. Most people know him as a philosopher, but Nietzsche was also one of the greatest psychologists of human behavior. He had a brutal honesty about human nature, and he wasn't afraid to say what most of us would rather ignore. People wear masks. They perform roles. They hide behind armor, not because they're fake, but because they're afraid. And the real truth about who they are leaks out in unexpected ways, in their silences, their exaggerations, their projections, even in the very things they hate about others. This video is about learning to see those leaks, those clues, those small but undeniable signs that reveal the reality behind the mask. Nietzsche identified 18 psychological truths, insights that cut through the performance and expose what people are really thinking, feeling, and fearing. And when you learn to see them, it changes everything. You stop being fooled by appearances. You stop getting lost in surface impressions. You begin to understand not only the people around you, but also yourself. But let me be clear, this is not a quick list of body language tricks or a shallow set of tips. This is a journey, a deeper way of seeing people that unfolds in 3 parts. In part 1, we'll look at the masks people create just to survive. In part 2, we'll explore the cracks in those masks, the slips, the contradictions, the little giveaways that reveal the truth. And finally, in part 3, we'll go deeper than surface behavior and see the wounds, the childhood patterns, the hidden fears that explain why people act the way they do. By the end of this journey, you'll see people differently. You'll recognize the fears behind their arrogance, the wounds behind their confidence, the stories behind their silence. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see yourself with more compassion too. Because Nietzsche's point wasn't to give us power over others. It was to give us clarity. So let's begin with the first layer, the masks. We live in a world where everyone plays a role. From the moment we're old enough to understand approval and rejection, we begin shaping a version of ourselves that will keep us safe. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He wrote, "Every profound spirit needs a mask, not as an insult, but as a warning. Because if you only see the mask, you'll never meet the person underneath." Truth 1. Everyone wears a mask to survive. Think about it. The overly kind friend who always agrees with everyone. On the surface, they seem selfless. But often, that kindness is a mask built from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of being disliked, fear of being abandoned. Or consider the strong, confident leader who never shows weakness. That too is a mask, not necessarily strength, but the terror of being exposed. The key, Nietzsche says, is to notice the tension. Masks slip when life applies pressure. If you want to read people, look at the places where they grow uncomfortable, the moments they dodge, the things they avoid. That's where the real person begins. Truth 2. What someone hates in others reveals what they hide in themselves. Nietzsche called this projection. We all do it. The person who constantly mocks arrogance often struggles with their own insecurities. The one who obsesses over dishonesty may be avoiding an uncomfortable truth in their own life. Think of it this way. Our strongest criticisms are mirrors. What we attack in others is often the very thing we're afraid of admitting in ourselves. So when you hear someone repeatedly criticizing the same trait in others, don't just look at their target. Look at what that criticism reveals about them. Truth 3. Silence reveals more than words. We're taught to trust language, to believe words are the ultimate truth. Nietzsche didn't. He saw language as a mask of its own, the herd's way of covering uncomfortable realities. Pay attention to the silences. Notice the pauses before someone answers. Notice when someone dodges a topic or gives a short, rehearsed response to a deep question. Silence, avoidance, hesitation. These moments reveal where someone is afraid to go. And that fear often speaks louder than anything they say. Truth 4. Excessive virtue is often disguised vanity. We've all seen it. The person who constantly proclaims their goodness, who loudly condemns others, who seems obsessed with morality. Nietzsche warned us, sometimes morality itself becomes a mask. The louder someone advertises their purity, the more likely it's hiding a shadow. Real goodness doesn't need applause. If someone needs to broadcast their virtue, it may not be about truth at all. It may be about superiority. Nietzsche called this the will to power in disguise. Truth 5. People don't lie to you first. They lie to themselves. This is one of Nietzsche's most compassionate insights. When someone says, "I'm fine," or "I don't care," they're not necessarily trying to deceive you. They've rehearsed those lines so many times, they believe them. Self-deception is often the first layer of every lie. It isn't evil, it's a survival mechanism, a way to keep functioning in a painful world. So when someone's story doesn't add up, don't jump to assuming malice. Realize they've been lying to themselves far longer than they've been lying to you. The cracks in their story aren't proof of manipulation. They're signs of a deeper struggle. Truth 6. Where someone feels superior, they're hiding inferiority. This is Nietzsche at his sharpest. When someone constantly boasts about their achievements or puts others down casually, it's not because they're truly confident. It's overcompensation. Behind superiority lies insecurity. Behind the throne sits a frightened child, terrified of being overlooked. Real confidence doesn't need to prove itself. It just exists quietly. So when you see someone trying hard to dominate, control, or impress, read past the performance. What looks like pride is often fear in disguise. And this is what Nietzsche wanted us to understand. Reading people isn't about judgment, it's about compassion. When you recognize the mask, you stop being fooled. But more importantly, you stop hating. You realize the loud, arrogant friend might just be afraid of being forgotten. The endlessly cheerful colleague might be hiding loneliness. The controlling boss might be covering inner chaos. When you see through the mask, you stop reacting to the performance. You start understanding the person. And that is the beginning of reading people, not as villains or as saints, but as humans, all wearing masks they didn't choose, all trying to survive in their own way. But Nietzsche didn't stop at the mask. He went deeper. He believed that when the mask begins to crack, when someone's performance starts to falter, the truth leaks out. And if you know what to look for, you'll see it. So in part 2, we'll explore the cracks in the persona and how guilt, exaggeration, and fear reveal more than words ever could. If masks are the first layer of human behavior, then cracks are the second. Because no mask is perfect. No performance lasts forever. Under pressure, under stress, or simply with time, the truth leaks out. Nietzsche believed that people can never fully hide themselves. And if you know where to look, the cracks reveal everything. Truth 7. Most actions are driven by unconscious fear. Think about the overtalker, the person who dominates every conversation. At first glance, it looks like arrogance. But look closer, it may be fear. Fear of being forgotten, of being ignored, of being insignificant. The same goes for the person who always says yes, even when they don't want to. That's not generosity. That's fear of rejection. Nietzsche saw fear as the hidden engine behind most human actions. We don't act from pure desire. He said, we act from the terror of losing love, status, or self-worth. If you want to read people, don't just ask what they want. Ask, what are they afraid of losing? Truth 8. Excessive criticism is projection. We touched on this earlier, but Nietzsche sharpened the point here. When someone constantly criticizes others, it's rarely about the other person. It's about themselves. The man who mocks emotional people might be terrified of his own emotions. The woman who constantly points out flaws in others might be fighting her reflection in secret. Criticism is rarely neutral. It's a confession. And if you listen closely, You'll hear someone's pain more clearly in their attacks on others than in their defenses of themselves. Truth 9. False confidence hides guilt. We've all met someone who always seems in control. The person who never admits weakness, who always acts sure of themselves. Nietzsche urged us to look beyond that surface, because behind rehearsed certainty often lies guilt or regret. Sometimes people put on the armor of confidence not because they feel strong, but because they're haunted by a version of themselves they're desperate to silence. Leaders, teachers, even parents often perform certainty to hide guilt about their past mistakes. Real peace doesn't need to perform. False confidence, on the other hand, is always exhausting, and sooner or later, it cracks. Truth 10. Exaggeration betrays insecurity. This one is subtle, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. When someone insists too strongly, "I don't care what anyone thinks," it usually means the opposite. When someone loudly declares, "I'm always happy," chances are they're not. Exaggeration is the ego shouting over its own doubts. Nietzsche believed extremism in any direction was a sign of imbalance, not strength. So whenever a person makes absolute claims, don't take the words at face value. Ask yourself, what insecurity is their exaggeration trying to drown out? Truth 11. The need for control masks inner chaos. Some people can't relax unless everything around them is under their control. They micromanage every detail, they cling to routines, they dominate conversations, relationships, even workplaces. On the surface, it looks like strength, but Nietzsche saw it differently. Obsession with control on the outside almost always signals chaos on the inside. A rigid personality isn't a sign of stability, it's a defense against inner disorder. And once you understand this, the controlling person no longer seems intimidating. You see them for what they are, someone terrified that if they loosen their grip, everything will collapse. Truth 12. Performance signals emptiness. This may be Nietzsche's most haunting insight, and it's even more relevant today. Look at social media, the endless highlight reels, the curated identities, the exaggerated performances of happiness, confidence, and success. Nietzsche warned that the louder the performance, the emptier the core. People who constantly perform, who need to be watched, praised, or validated, don't actually feel whole. They fear that without the performance, they'll disappear. True confidence, true identity, is quiet. It doesn't need an audience. But emptiness craves noise. And when you see someone endlessly performing, remember, it's not strength on display. It's need that S.O. Here's the shift Nietzsche wanted us to experience. Once you learn to see these cracks, the exaggerations, the criticisms, the control, the endless performing, you stop taking people at face value. You realize that behind the critic is insecurity. Behind the confident smile may be guilt. Behind the performer is a fear of being unseen. You're not reading minds, you're reading masks. You're learning to listen, not to the words, but to the contradictions, the tension, the slips. And here's the surprising part. When you read people this way, you don't become judgmental. You become compassionate, because you stop seeing arrogance, superiority, or control as personal threats. You begin to see them as fear. And when you see fear, the natural response isn't anger, it's understanding. Nietzsche didn't give us these truths to help us manipulate others. He gave them to help us stop being manipulated, stop being fooled, and most importantly, stop mistaking the mask for the person. Because once you see the cracks, you can no longer unsee them. Asterisk, but Nietzsche wasn't finished. Beyond the cracks, there's a deeper layer still, the wounds. The childhood experiences, the buried fears, the unhealed pain that shapes everything a person becomes. And if you truly want to read someone, that's where you have to go. So in part 3, we'll uncover the wounds behind the patterns, the stories that live at the heart of every mask. We've seen the masks people wear. We've seen the cracks where those masks begin to slip. But Nietzsche believed there's an even deeper layer, the hidden wounds that shape a person's entire life. Because underneath every behavior is a story, and those stories, often written in childhood, are still playing out in adulthood. If you truly want to understand someone, you have to look beyond the performance and into the wound. Truth 13. No one speaks from pure logic. They speak from pain. You may think people argue from facts, from reason, from logic. But Nietzsche saw through that illusion. He believed most of our so-called logical positions are really defenses against old wounds. When someone says, "I don't believe in love," it's just a fantasy. They're not describing reality. They're protecting themselves from heartbreak. When someone insists, "You can't trust anyone," it usually comes from betrayal, not philosophy. Behind every worldview lies a scar. The question isn't, what do they believe? The real question is, what hurt them into believing it? Truth 14. How someone reacts to weakness reveals their true power. You want to know who someone really is? Watch how they treat people who are vulnerable. Do they mock weakness? Do they punish mistakes? Or can they sit quietly with someone else's pain without flinching? Nietzsche believed that true strength isn't measured in domination, but in restraint. The person who lashes out at weakness is usually running from their own. But the one who can respond with compassion has already won the inner war. If you want to read someone's soul, don't watch how they treat the strong. Watch how they treat the powerless. Truth 15. Fear of being forgotten drives the hunger for attention. Some people demand the spotlight. They tell the longest stories. They wear the loudest clothes. They can't stand being ignored. At first, it looks like confidence. But Nietzsche said it often comes from something much deeper, the terror of invisibility. The child who felt unseen becomes the adult who needs to be noticed at all costs. So when you meet someone who is too much, it might not be vanity at all. It might be a cry for reassurance. See me. Don't let me disappear. Truth 16. Attacks often come from envy. One of Nietzsche's boldest truths is also the hardest to swallow. Sometimes, when people criticize you harshly, it's not because they dislike you. It's because they envy you. Criticism is easier than admiration. It's easier to tear someone down than admit you want what they have. The coworker who mocks someone's success may be silently grieving their own failures. The friend who gossips about another's freedom may secretly crave it. Envy is desire in disguise. And when you recognize that, criticism loses its sting. You stop taking it personally. You see the pain behind the attack. Truth 17. People act out their childhood, not their beliefs. Nietzsche didn't believe adults were as free as they claimed to be. He saw them as actors stuck in roles written long ago. The person who never listens was probably a child who was never heard. The person who hides their emotions may have been punished for showing them. The person who overworks for approval often grew up believing love had to be earned. We think we're living from our values, but most of the time, we're just reenacting the past. If you want to read someone, ask not who they are now, but who they had to be to survive as a child. Truth 18. Patterns are confessions. Here is Nietzsche's final, and perhaps most powerful, truth. People may not always put their wounds into words, but they reveal them through patterns. The person who disappears when intimacy grows isn't random. That's a confession of fear. The one who flirts endlessly but never connects is confessing a fear of vulnerability. The one who fills every moment with work is confessing they can't face stillness. These patterns aren't accidents. They're survival strategies, repeated again and again. If you learn to see them, you can read people before they ever speak. And when you reach this level of seeing, something remarkable happens. You stop judging. You stop personalizing. You begin to see others not as enemies or mysteries, but as humans shaped by wounds, just like you. The critic, the bully, the show-off, the control freak, they're not villains. They're children in adult bodies, still carrying the fears that once kept them safe. And this is where Nietzsche's truths become more than psychology. They become philosophy. He didn't give us these insights so we could manipulate others. He gave them to us so we could awaken. To see that everything we hate in others is often something unresolved in ourselves. To realize that every mask we notice in others is a reminder of the masks we wear too. So take a moment to reflect. Which of these truths hit you the hardest? Was it the idea that masks hide fear? That exaggerated confidence covers guilt? That attention-seeking is really a cry not to be forgotten? Or maybe it was the final truth, that patterns themselves are confessions. Whichever it was, remember this. To read others is also to read yourself. The more clearly you see them, the more clearly you see you. And that's the true gift Nietzsche wanted to leave us. Not power, but clarity. Not judgment, but compassion. We've come a long way. From the masks people wear, to the cracks where those masks begin to slip, and finally to the wounds hidden beneath it all. Nietzsche's 18 psychological truths aren't just clever observations. They're a map. A way of seeing people as they really are, not as they pretend to be. And the irony is this. Once you learn to read people clearly, you stop judging them. You realize that the arrogant person is probably terrified of being overlooked. The cheerful performer may be hiding sadness. The critic, the controller, the endlessly confident one, all of them are protecting wounds they may not even know they carry. Reading people isn't about getting power over them. It's about compassion. Nietzsche's warning was never, see through others so you can control them. It was, see through others so you stop being fooled and start connecting. Because the more deeply you understand someone, the harder it is to hate them. You see the child behind the adult, the fear behind the anger, the wound behind the mask. And here's the final truth. This isn't just about others. It's about you. Every mask we've talked about, every fear, every contradiction, you have them too. We all do. And when you recognize these truths in yourself, you begin to treat yourself with the same compassion you offer to others. That's when real growth begins. So ask yourself, which of Nietzsche's truths revealed something about you? Was it the need for control? The fear of being forgotten? The patterns you repeat without realizing? Whatever it was, let it be a starting point, not for shame, but for awareness. Because self-understanding is the foundation of freedom. If this video opened your eyes, share the truth that hit you hardest in the comments. Let's build a community that sees through masks, not to judge, but to understand. And if you want to keep exploring the hidden psychology of human behavior, make sure to subscribe. This is just the beginning. Because once you learn to see through the mask, you don't just understand people better. You finally begin to understand yourself.